I'm going to rank the Black Sabbath records, 19 Black Sabbath records. Honorable mention to the album The Devil You Know by the band Heaven and Hell, which was basically the fourth album with the Dio lineup. Even Vinny Appice and Sharon Yoko Ono Osbourne would not let them use the name. It killed their album sales and their concert ticket sales, and it was the Dio lineup, and the album is really good. It came in 13 of 20, but I'm not putting it in because it's not a Black Sabbath release. How I rank albums: I listen to each song, give them a grade 1 to 4, add up all the grades, divide by the number of songs, get the mean average for the records, put them in order. If you like anything I say, please hit like and subscribe. At 19 is the album 13. This album is awful. It's the 19th album, came out in 2013. One word: forced. This album is forced. I don't even know why it came out. The songs sound forced. They're not good. The vocals sound forced. I got three major issues with 13. The Ozzy vocals, they're just not good. The melodies are generic. They're way too loud in the mix, but that's Rick Rubin's issue, which is my second complaint with this album, is the production. Rick Rubin, he's done great records with the Red Hot Chili Peppers and a bunch of others. He said to the band, let's get back to the original sound, and apparently he had a Sabbath listen to their first record so they could get back to the old organic groove. This album has zero organic groove, zero similarity to anything early Sabbath. The first song on this record, End of the Beginning, it's like they're trying to do a part two kind of to the song Black Sabbath, and it's just awful. I'll get to that in a second. So Rick Rubin, the producer, terrible decisions. They bring in Brad Wilk on drums from Rage Against the Machine. When have you ever listened to a Rage Against the Machine song and said, man, that is awesome because of those drums? They bring this Brad Wilk in, apparently just to raise their relevance because Sabbath was far from cool at this point. So they bring in the drummer from Rage Against the Machine. The drums are boring. They're weak. They're undermixed. That might be on Rick Rubin. They're predictable. Why would you bring in a drummer? Why not Tommy Clufetta, the guy who plays on the Ozzy solo stuff? Just not a good record. The best tracks on this record, there aren't none. Methodemic. I guess I don't want to punch myself in the throat when I hear that song. Problem with that song is, now what are we into? Sabbath, social issues, Methodemic. What's next? Covidemic. The worst tracks, End of the Beginning. It's just not good. This End of the Beginning song, it's mellow for like 2 minutes and 40 seconds, and then it picks up with a guitar riff, and you're ready for Tony to bring some classic Sabbath. And the riff is boring. Like, we waited 2.5 minutes. God Is Dead, the lead single off this record. Kind of a genius selling point with the title. God Is Dead. Well, you can't say God is dead because you're going to really upset some people. God is dead, question mark, which is what they have. So now you're saying God is dead, but there's a question mark, so you're almost asking. But if you were asking, you would say, is God dead? But that's not what it says. It's God is dead. Ooh, and then question mark. Pretty crafty there. Too bad this song is not crafty. It's just not good. Age of Reason, not good. Damaged Soul, not good. Dear Father is just unlistenable. This album 13 sounds like Ozzy's vocals are doubled like 10 times. And they're auto-tuned. And Ozzy hasn't sang live in decades. I mean, back, 25 years ago, Robert Mason, the singer who is in Warrant, took over for Janie Lane, of course. he was behind the curtain at Ozzy shows singing. So Ozzy was singing to Robert Mason singing live. I guess that's better than singing to a track, but I mean, at least every night the fans get a unique performance. A unique performance from Robert Mason. At number 18, Forbidden. This album gets kicked on. Everybody kicks on this. Normally it's dead last in most people's rankings. It's pretty bad. Came out in 1995. So the last record, 13, came out in 2013, or, now at 95. That was the spread between Sabbath records. One word for Forbidden, it's unrecognizable. They bring in producer Ernie C. from, Ice-T Body Count. Why, I don't know. Tony Iommi's apparently chasing trends, trying to chase relevance. Maybe that's a better word. It's just not good. Tony Martin, the singer of this Sabbath era, I think this was his 5th record. He's an interesting dude. He could sing the Dio stuff. He could fake the Ozzy stuff. He would have been a great 80s singer if he had, found an 80s band and not devoted his 14 years to Sabbath. The best tracks on Forbidden, well, there are no good tracks on Forbidden. Guilty as Hell, it's passable. Rusty Angels, it's okay. It's not bad, but it's not great. The title track, Forbidden, is okay. But the worst tracks on Forbidden, holy camoly, Illusion of Power. It's the first song. There's too many words. Tony Martin's like trying to jam in a bunch of words into the verses. It's awkward. Ernie C., the producer, and guitar player of Body Count, he crowbars Ice-T into the song Illusion of Power. So now the lead cut off of the lead track on the new album, it's a song that ends up featuring Ice-T rapping. And this is Black Sabbath. The weird part is the best thing about the song is the Ice-T rap. It's an awful song. Get a Grip. Get a Grip was called Black Ice. But Ernie C., the producer, and You're the Boss, said, well, we can't very much have a song called Black Ice when you had a black guy named Ice-T singing on the previous cut. And that would look weird. So they changed the name to Get a Grip, which is a horrible name. Get a Grip? Just how about Grip? Shaking Off the Chains. What an annoying guitar riff that is. The second half of the album is stronger than the first half. Forbidden is a tough listen. At 17, Never Say Die, the 8th album, 1978. One word for Never Say Die, regret. I mean, you hate to end on a bad record. They weren't getting along. Ozzy quit the band. They replaced him with some chode named Dave Walker, apparently in some band called Savoy Brown. You got to YouTube that. It's pretty bad. Ozzy comes back. Dave Walker goes. They record this album, and it's just not good. Regret. You hate to end your career on a bad album. Never Say Die. But they actually made up for it in 2013 when they made a even worse album called 13. The drums saved the songs on Never Say Die. The drums are good. I mean, Bill Ward says he was kind of in and out of consciousness with the alcohol, but these drums sound great. Ozzy quit, came back like 6 weeks later or something. The best tracks on Never Say Die, the title track, Never Say Die. Love that track. Ozzy played it in solo concerts when he left. Junior's Eyes, very cool tune, but it's not Sabbath. The worst tracks, 6 through 9, are not good. Air Dance. At this point, I am tired of Ozzy. I mean, it was clear we were at the end. Air Dance didn't help that. Over to You. The piano is annoying. Why is there piano? Breakout. There's horns. Why are there horns in Sabbath? And then Swinging the Chain. And of course, you have the only instrument more annoying than a horn, and it's the harmonica. At 16, Seventh Star, the 12th album from 1986. On vocals, the voice of rock, according to England, Glenn Hughes. He was the bass player, co-lead singer in Deep Purple and Mach 3. I think so what you'd call that when Roger Glover and Ian Gillan were gone. They brought in a unknown David Coverdale, and of course on bass Glenn Hughes. Killer stuff. So we're excited. What Black Sabbath? It's not even Black Sabbath at this point. I mean, it's just Tony Iommi and a bunch of fill-in guys. The sound of these records, most of these later records, don't even sound like Black Sabbath. I mean, everything after Dio, no resemblance. So we're at this Seventh Star. Apparently, it was going to be a Tony Iommi solo record, so he says. And then when they recorded it and got into it, then apparently the record label said, well, now it's going to be a Black Sabbath record. Even Glenn Hughes says, I didn't want to join Black Sabbath. I wanted to do a solo record, even if it was the Tony Iommi solo record. I don't know if I believe any of that, because I don't think bands go into million or $100,000 to rent studios, hundreds of thousands of dollars, $1 million studios, and you don't have contracts signed. You don't have producers who charge thousands of dollars a day, engineers who are very expensive and part of a union. You don't have it signed what the business is called. Is this Black Sabbath or is this Tony Iommi solo? But Tony Iommi claims, they switcherooed me. They pulled the old switcheroo. Seventh Star, the 12th album. One word, it's forgotten. When you talk to Sabbath fans, they talk about, Born Again. They talk about, some Tony Martin. They talk about Dio, of course. Nobody ever mentions the Seventh Star, Glenn Hughes. And, Glenn Hughes could have been the best and last replacement singer if he wasn't such a drunk and druggy. Glenn Hughes says he doesn't remember a single day from the 80s. So during this whole Seventh Star thing, Glenn Hughes gets hammered and he gets punched in the face by, I think, a tour manager. Blood cakes on the back of his throat. Can't sing. If you YouTube or Google Glenn Hughes singing after punched in the face, it's bad. My Uncle Dave could sound better. Just terrible. So they fire him. The best tracks, In for the Kill. Great track. Seventh Star title track is so good. The worst tracks, No Stranger to Love. So this album comes out. The first lead single is No Stranger to Love. Why would any band make their first lead single a ballad? Let alone Black Sabbath. Awful. Awful song, awful decision. Heart Like a Wheel. Angry Heart. A lot of hearts in this Sabbath. In Memory is boring. Just not a great record. 15, Tear. So this was the 15th album with the Black Sabbath name. Came out in 1990. One word for Tear. Vikings. I don't know if it's about Vikings. I've listened to the album probably 5 times my whole life. It just doesn't get me. I listened to it and ranked the songs to do this. Vikings. Is it a concept record? Apparently. I mean, at this point, nobody cared about Black Sabbath in 1990. The best track, Anno Mundi. What a great song. But the worst track, Odin's Court. Everything else is just kind of there. Nothing terrible, but nothing ever pushing the rock and roll line forward. 14 of the 19 Black Sabbath records is Dehumanizer. The 16th album, the third with Ronnie James Dio, 1992. One word for Dehumanizer. Doomed. I mean, it's 1992. You got Pearl Jam. You got Nirvana. Grunge is here. Soundgarden. We can go on and on. Dinosaur Jr. We can go on and on. Nobody wanted to hear Ronnie James Dio, Black Sabbath, Iron Maiden. For the Fear of the Dark tour, Mike Grazer and I went and saw Iron Maiden, Blossom Music Center. 3,000 people. This is a band that now in 2025 can do soccer stadiums. And we saw them, 3,000 people. That's how dead metal was in 1992. So, Sabbath gets back with Dio. No one really cares. Tony Martin was still the singer of Sabbath at this time. And apparently he's on his way to work and rehearsal, and he gets a call, not from Tony Iommi. Oh, don't bother coming by. Ronnie's here. You're no longer in the band. Tony Martin got bullied many times by the Sabbath camp, and he always came back and took more. Poor Tony Martin. So he turns around. He was very into this project that became Dehumanizer. Apparently, Tony Martin was very much BD into that. And he just gets a call, you're no longer in the band. The best tracks on Dehumanizer, there's no classic tracks. I mean, there's no classic Sabbath tracks, no matter who the singer is. Computer God is okay. That's probably the best track. Buried Alive, it's okay. Time Machine, it's okay. But the album does end stronger than it opens. The worst tracks, After All, The Dead, Too Late, I don't know, it's just kind of okay. At 13, Technical Ecstasy. The 7th album, 1976. One word for Technical Ecstasy. Weird. If you like anything I say, please hit like and subscribe. So, they put this album out, Technical Ecstasy. The song titles are weird. The lyrical content's weird. It's a confusing album cover. Apparently, two robots falling in love on an escalator. When did Black Sabbath stop being Black Sabbath? Sabotage, right? The production is great on this album. It sounds really good. Produced by Tony Iommi. It sounds really good, but it doesn't sound like Black Sabbath production. The best Black Sabbath sounding record's probably the first record. It was just organic. But good sounding record. The best tracks. There are no classic Sabbath tracks on Technical Ecstasy. You Won't Change Me is okay. Pretty good. It's Alright is alright. Dirty Women. I know that's a Sabbath classic of this era, but it's just okay. The worst tracks, well, there are really no terrible tracks. She's Gone is not very good, but there's no terrible tracks. And number 12, Headless Cross. Now, the next three albums are three Tony Martin records, and they're all like the same. I listen to one day and one the next, and I prefer one over the other. They're all kind of just the same. Most people say Headless Cross is the best Tony Martin record, and that's probably the case. I listened to The three good records he has, not, Tear and Forbidden, but the other three of the five are all real good. So these next three can just switch. But at 13, 1989, Headless Cross, it's a place in England where Tony Martin lived. One word, consistent. This album is very consistent. Nothing super great, nothing bad, just consistent, good music. The best tracks, the song Headless Cross, maybe my favorite Tony Martin song. Kill in the Spirit World, good song, but the worst tracks. Well, there are no terrible tracks, no mediocre tracks, just average tracks. And it's a consistent record. So Tony Martin, he comes into Sabbath at a doomed period. I mean, after Dio, they never recovered. This Tony Martin guy comes in, a no-name. He didn't have good stage presence. He kind of just Neanderthal around. He had the hairline of LeBron James. He had the hairdo of Nancy Wilson from 1978. Weird. Good singer, but just never fit. And Tony Iommi was never happy or satisfied with Tony Martin. At number 11, The Eternal Idol, the 12th album, 1987. The first Tony Martin album. So on this album, Ray Gillan did vocals, and he was the one who replaced Glenn Hughes when he got punched in the face and quit the tour, or not, he got fired from the tour. So Ray Gillan leaves the band to go join Badlands with Jake E. Lee. So they bring in Tony Martin. Ray Gillan gets AIDS. Very sad story. Knowingly or unknowingly has relations with groupies. I hate to use that term, but girls who were band fans. And he passed and sued and everything else. Well, I'm telling you this because you can't find any Ray Gillan stuff. So Ray Gillan sings on Badlands Records with Jake E. Lee, and these albums are great. You can't buy them. So a judge ordered, because of Ray Gillan's suspicious behavior, they won't let you sell albums with him on it. Now, I would think you would sell them and then give the profit to the victims of Ray Gillan or their families. But no, you can't find Ray Gillan. So if you want to listen to Ray Gillan, the singer, put aside his dark side and listen to the guy singing. He's amazing. And where you can do that is on the Eternal Idol, one of the later editions, a box set, I think, or something. But you get the original Eternal Idol, and then you get it with Ray Gillan singing. And I'm not saying Ray Gillan's better, but it's just really good to hear because Ray Gillan was such a great singer. And if you can hear Badlands, Ray Gillan, Jake E. Lee, it's amazing stuff, so underrated. Should have been huge. Can't find that stuff. They won't let Ray Gillan music be heard by us. Fascinating story. All right. Well, the best tracks on The Eternal Idol. The Shining is great. Ancient Warrior is great. The worst tracks, there are no terrible tracks, no mediocre tracks, just kind of average tracks like, Headless Cross. The next album at number 10, Cross Purposes, 1994. 17th album, Geezer Butler comes back. He has he was now bouncing around. He recorded Osmosis with Ozzy a year after this. One word for cross purposes, disappointment, because Geezer Butler's back. You would think there'd be a little spark. It was still Tony Martin. This album, Eternal Idol, Hellish Cross, I put them all three in a blender and mix them up and not know what song came from which record. But the name Cross Purposes, at this point, I'm kind of tired of crosses. So many crosses. We got headless crosses, sideways crosses, upside down crosses, three-dimensional crosses, southern crosses, crosses on stage, crosses on necklaces, crosses on thorns. Tony Iommi has crosses on his guitar fretboard. I know that Black Sabbath has a shtick, but at this point, a lot of crosses. For a band that no longer is being, devilish, the devilish thing kind of ended, definitely ended after Ronnie. The best tracks, Eyewitness, Cross of Thorns, Virtual Death. Virtual Death sounds like Alice in Chains in a good way. The worst tracks, there are no terrible tracks. Very consistent record. Tony Martin, he is a team player. I mean, this guy had been fired like 20 times. Never got a phone call from Tony Iommi, of course. At this point, Tony Martin wanted to make a solo album, or at least somewhere in this time period, but he did not because he wanted to be loyal to Sabbath, and there's complications if you're making a solo record because now you're competing against your boss. Your boss is Tony Iommi. So he puts it off, and then they fire him again. Tony Martin, this guy got beat up by Sabbath, or by Tony Iommi. At number 9, Born Again, the 11th album, 1983, the only album with Ian Gillan from Deep Purple. The singer of Deep Purple, so they had the bass player of Mach 3 Deep Purple. Now they got the singer of Mach 2 Deep Purple. Pretty cool. Apparently Geezer and Tony and Ian Gillan went to a pub, got hammered, and then, they go back home and sleep it off. And the next day, the manager of Ian Gillan calls him and says, "You need to tell me if you're going to do these kinds of things." And he goes, "What'd I do?" He goes, "Well, apparently you joined Black Sabbath last night." He said, "I didn't know I did that." I think this is all folklore. How do you not, remember joining Black Sabbath? I mean, they were still cool at this point, I mean, when Tony Martin joined them, not so great. Or when Glenn Hughes jumped on board, it was kind of a train already off the tracks. But you're coming in right after Ronnie, and this is a band who's selling records. The problem with this album is it is murky. One word for the Born Again record is murky. The production's terrible, and I don't even know if it's the production. So apparently, and I've heard Tony Iommi, I believe, say this, one of them in that camp, they think maybe the master tapes were put on a heater or something by accident. Someone put it down and then got up and came back later, and took them to the mastering, because the band says when they left the studio, it did not sound like that. Well, after the studio comes the mastering. The mastering's just to get it ready for, highs and lows and peaks, compress it a little bit, get it ready for streaming and various other issues. Back in the album days, mastering was you would EQ it from the outside in. I mean, the reason analog albums are so wonderful, the outside sounds better than the inside because it's a bigger circle, and it's all like physics and stuff. So an album would put their worst songs at the end of each side because it was a smaller circumference, and of course that would automatically degrade the quality. So mastering, you'd go through and EQ each song as you went into the inside circle and EQ them to try to kind of save them from the degradation of just natural physics. Yeah. So this album, Born Again, went off to mastering. Shouldn't do anything but improve it. It comes back, it sounds like it was ran through a washer and dryer. The band was horrified, but it was already out to production. It's kind of like Kiss is Hotter Than Hell. We're Hotter Than Hell. Same kind of thing. The album just got fuzzed up, and the band never knew why to this day. Kiss, Hotter Than Hell, and Born Again are really similar in their production in that they're the fuzziest records ever that are popular, and they don't know how it happened. But it's not a good fuzzy. The album cover of Born Again has got this baby on it. So apparently a artist was working for Ozzy, which was Sharon Arden, Yoko Ono, Osbourne, and her dad, Don Arden, was doing Sabbath. So I believe Don Arden gets the artist from Ozzy to do an album, and he didn't want to do it. He didn't want to be caught in the middle. So he took a stock photo of a baby. Now this Born Again record, that baby on there, it's a stock photo. It's the same baby on the 1981 Depeche Mode single, New Life, I believe it's called. The same baby. So this guy takes this stock photo baby, he makes it look like a demon baby. He puts green fingernails or something on it, draw some horns on it, a demon horn baby, and it's just awful. Shows it to the band, assuming they'll say that's terrible, so then he can go back and work for Ozzy. The band ends up using it. So when the album comes out, or at least the band sees what is being shipped, Geezer Butler said he vomited when he saw that record album cover. Now, years later, I love the album cover. It's great. Bill Ward said he loves his drums on this album. He got sober, really is proud of his drums. Because on Heaven and Hell, Bill Ward said he didn't even remember playing a single beat in that studio. Bill Ward loved his drumming on this, and it was great drums. The lyrics on Born Again are elementary. I mean, Ian Gillan either sings genius lyrics or just low-hanging fruit lyrics, and these are pretty low-hanging fruit. The best tracks on Born Again, Trashed. The opening cut, Trashed. They have never played Trashed live, ever. So the band were all given cars. There was a racetrack at the place they were recording. Ian Gillan was living outside in a tent. And he decides to get in a car and go around the track. And he decides to take Bill Ward's car. Flips it, goes to bed, wakes up. Bill Ward says, "Why is my car upside down?" He says, "Oh, apparently it was trashed." Bill Ward's never got over that. To this day, he says that wasn't cool. Disturbing the Priest. Disturbing the Priest is absolutely a masterpiece. And that murky production just makes it better. Disturbing the Priest is so good. Apparently they were recording. There was a priest that lived by there. And he said, "Hey, you're being really loud." Disturbing the Priest, what a great song title. And it's a good song. Great song. Zero the Hero, pretty good. The worst tracks on the record, there are no terrible tracks. Keep It Warm is kind of okay. If you like anything I say, please hit like and subscribe. At number 8's Paranoid, the second record, 1970. One word for Paranoid, it's political. Had a real Vietnam, anti-war, the after effects of Vietnam with the heroin and all. Really good, timely record. Sabbath were more hippie than tough guys. I mean, and they certainly weren't devil worshippers. They were hippies. Hell, Ozzy had lyrics that were faith-based. It was originally titled War Pigs. That's why the cover has this dude with a shield, and he kind of looks like a pig. and I think he's pink. He's a war pig. Well, the record label said, well, you can't do that, you know. So they changed it to Paranoid. And the song Paranoid is interesting because it was a throwaway. The album was basically in place. The producer said, we need one more song. They didn't have one more song. Excuse me. So the band goes out. They go to lunch. Tony Iommi just plays a basic riff. They come back. Geezer says, I'll put lyrics to that. He writes some lyrics. They record Paranoid. Ozzy is reading the lyrics off of a sheet of paper. Throw away. It is probably the most famous Black Sabbath song of all time. Another song that's kind of similar to that is Tom Petty, American Girl. Wrote it at the end, put it at the back of the record. Filler. His greatest, most popular song. Not greatest necessarily, but most popular. The best tracks, War Pigs, of course. Paranoid, of course. Iron Man, of course. The worst tracks on Paranoid. Electric Funeral is okay. It's awesome. It's great. But Rat Salad. Now, I don't understand why bands put instrumentals on their records. Save them for the concert. Do like Fish does. I mean, Fish is so genius because they will hammer songs live and they end up on bootlegs and YouTube videos. And before you know it, the band Fish will have a boatload of songs that they've never even released, but they play them and everybody knows them. Instrumentals can be that same thing. Now, if you're Rush, put out instrumentals. But Rat Salad, it's not only a boring instrumental, but then there's a huge drum solo that is... You know, I don't want a drum solo on a record. I mean, who is in their car, you know, playing 8 tracks and cruising down the road in 1978, and you're like, oh man, turn it up. That's that drum solo from Rat Salad. Van Halen, before they were Van Halen, they were called Mammoth, of course. And at some point before that, they were called Genesis. But then, of course, there was another band called Genesis. And then Van Halen was, at one point, called Rat Salad after this mediocre instrumental. At number 7, Sabotage, 1975, the 6th album. One word for Sabotage, it's the last. It's the last good Ozzy album. It was recorded at night because they were in court every day fighting a crooked manager who ripped them off blind. But you know what? No one put a gun to your head. All these bands, they're geniuses on their instruments, but they're, very elementary on their business practices. How many times do we hear about, a manager ripped me off? Well, why in the hell did you sign a piece of paper that said, I am going to rip you off? I mean, Sabbath, in their peak, were still like sharing hotel rooms because they couldn't, had no money. And they're like, well, but the band down the hall, has a whole floor to themselves. And we're selling more records than them. And I'm shacking up, with Bill Ward over here. And we're sharing a bathroom. And we're the biggest band in the world. How's that work? Well, you signed the deal. Sabotage, great record. Some people say it's the best record. A lot of Sabbath fans say this is the best record. What's with the cover? So you got, they all showed up, and I don't know if they even knew a picture was being taken, but Ozzy in some weird kimono or something. Geezer's in these. No, it's Bill Ward. Bill Ward's in these red pants with bulging junk. I mean, what's up with the bulging junk? I mean, leather pants aren't comfortable to start. He slaps his pants on. I think they're a woman's pants, and he's got bulging junk. I'm tired of the bulging junk. I mean, Led Zeppelin, Robert Plant, always got the bulging junk. The Rolling Stones album, a big bulging junk. Aerosmith, Steven Tyler, everywhere Steven Tyler went, he had to show bulging junk. I'm telling you, this is an epidemic. I mean, successful rock stars, apparently, this is part of the credo. every 80s hair metal singer, bulging junk. I'm watching, I'm looking at the Sabotage cover. It's so weird that I like it until I look at Bill Ward's pants. It's the last great Sabbath record. The best tracks, Hole in the Sky is so good. Symptom of the Universe is great. Megalomania is amazing. The worst tracks, there are no bad tracks. Just better than average tracks. But Hole in the Sky, Symptom of the Universe, and Megalomania make this album a classic. At 6, Mob Rules. The 10th album, 1981, the second Ronnie album. One word for Mob Rules, a continuation. It sounds just like a continuation from Heaven and Hell. It takes right off. They don't change their style none. They do swap out drummers. No More Bill Ward, Vinny Appice. Bill Ward said he didn't even remember recording Heaven and Hell. So he was pretty bad off. So they brought in Vinny Appice. Let's discuss Vinny Appice. So his older brother, Carmine, he pronounces the name Carmine Appice. And his younger brother, Vinny, he pronounces it Vinny Appice. And then they have a sister who I believe pronounces the name Appice. Pretty sure I know the correct pronunciation. Appice. That's true. I looked it up. The best tracks, Turn on the Night, The Sign of the Southern Cross, The Mob Rules. I love Mob Rules. Mob Rules and Heaven and Hell are almost equal to me. I don't know which one's better. The worst tracks on Mob Rules, there are no bad tracks. I don't understand the instrumental ES 5150. Not sure why that's even there. Were you out of ideas? I mean, why not another track with vocals? Or how about this, a good instrumental? Number 5, Heaven and Hell, the 9th album, 1980. One word for Heaven and Hell, metal. I mean, Sabbath weren't metal until Heaven and Hell. I mean, when Sabbath came out in, the early days, the Ozzy days, heavy metal, I mean, that was the whole Birmingham, y'all work at steel factories, were metal workers. What we know of metal now is not Black Sabbath then. Black Sabbath were stoner rock with Ozzy, sludge rock, doom rock, whatever you want to call it, classic rock at times. They certainly weren't the metal that we know today. Today, metal is Metallica, Slayer, Megadeth, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest. Sabbath were blues. Sabbath were never metal. Until now, Heaven and Hell, they are now metal. Right from the opening track. Neon Nights. Just metal out the yin yang. Love it. The lyrics are now no longer hippie lyrics. I mean, Ozzy and Geezer wrote 90% of the lyrics, but they were, a cult. Ozzy had some Christian lyrics, he did, and some lyrics for peace and love. And no longer. Now it's sorcery and dragons because it's Ronnie James Dio. I wonder what Geezer Butler felt like. The guy is playing the most massive bass we've ever heard in hard rock, and he also writes the lyrics. And I think writing lyrics is the hardest thing. You kind of either do it or you don't. You got it or you don't got it. Something in the head that just produces thoughts. Because you got genius instrumentalists who can't write a single roses are red, violets are blue. And you got Geezer. So Geezer's, writing the lyrics. And then Ronnie Dio comes in and says, I got this, we're good. And I wonder if Geezer was like, oh shit, now I lost my my part of that band, or did he say, "Thank God, I don't no longer got to write lyrics. Hallelujah"? I wonder. Great record. Heaven and Hell is just so good. The cover, you got these angels smoking cigarettes. Well, Van Halen on 1984 had an angel smoking a cigarette. And when 1984 came out, I was 11 and a half. So I never knew about Heaven and Hell. So I saw this, oh my God, this baby smoking a cigarette. It's so cool. I got to listen to this. Well, I never knew that the same shtick was done on Heaven and Hell. So yes, Van Halen did rip off that idea. Picasso said about a good artist borrows, a great artist steals. Chris Murphy also said that. Ronnie Dio comes into the band. How many times has a singer actually replaced a singer of a successful band? I mean, AC/DC, Bon Scott got replaced, of course, with Brian Johnson. The Brian Johnson records sold way more than the Bon Scott records, but the truists will say they prefer Bon Scott. I prefer Brian Johnson. Iron Maiden, Paul Di'Anno, after the first two records, gets replaced with Bruce Dickinson from Samson. Of course, that's the classic lineup at this point. I don't think no one's going to say, oh, I take that back. A lot of Iron Maiden fans say, oh, we prefer Paul Di'Anno. Well, I'd like to hear Bruce record the first two records at that time period, because you can't do it now. Sammy Hagar replaces David Lee Roth. Most fans say, oh, Sammy's okay, but the David Lee Roth album, that's the shit. Some people say, oh, they hate Sammy. I do not like Sammy solo whatsoever, but I do like his Van Halen stuff. Van Halen only had 4 #1 records in their career. The 4 #1 Van Halen records were the Sammy Hagar Van Halen records. The last Roth record, 1984, went to #2. So obviously, people like the Sammy stuff. Black Sabbath, Dio comes in. And home run. What a home run. Ozzy was so jealous of Heaven and Hell. As it was going up the charts, he would follow hour-to-hour updates throughout the day of the chart position of Heaven and Hell, because it just bothered him so much that they were having success. Apparently, at one point, he went into practice. Randy Rhoads was listening to Heaven and Hell, and he punched Randy Rhoads in the face. He's punched a lot of people in the face, apparently, back in these days. And, his wife, Sharon Yoko Ono Osbourne, allegedly had sex with Randy Rhoads. So, Ozzy was okay with you having sex with his wife. But if you listen to the album Heaven and Hell, he punched you in the face. That makes total sense, actually. Ozzy brought a little person on tour, called him Ronnie to, poke fun at Ronnie James Dio not being a tall guy. Ronnie James Dio was 10 foot tall when he was on stage singing. Yeah, Ozzy was pretty immature, to say the least, to bring a little man on stage and call him Ronnie in the show. Best tracks: Neon Nights, so good. Children of the Sea, that was the first song Dio wrote with Sabbath. The title track, Heaven and Hell, is amazing. Die Young is amazing. The worst tracks on Heaven and Hell. There are no bad tracks. Lady Evil is the worst track. It's okay, but there are no bad tracks. If you like anything I say, please hit like and subscribe. At number 4, Master of Reality, the third album, 1971. One word for Master of Reality: stoner. This was the beginning of stoner rock. Man, stoner rock. Nebula, Fu Manchu, Monster Magnet, Caius. Oh, so good. The birth of stoner rock. The best tracks on Master of Reality, Sweet Leaf, the opening track. Many people think that was not a good choice for the opening track. That is Tony Iommi coughing in the beginning, and then they loop or whatever they do to it to make that effect. But Sweet Leaf is great. Children of the Grave. Children of the Grave has to be the greatest Black Sabbath song ever. It has to be. I mean, those drums, those overlaid, just monstrous. Bill Ward is so underrated. He's stoner rock. Bill Ward is so underrated. He's a little bit of Bonham. He's a little bit of Phil Rudd from AC/DC. He's a little bit of Ian Pace from Deep Purple. He hits hard, but he's got a little swing to him. But yet sometimes he just lays down the beat. I mean, Bill Ward invented stoner rock drums. Children of the Grave is just amazing. Like Iron Maiden, Hallowed Be Thy Name. I think no matter where you fall in the Iron Maiden history of joining the band, I think at the end of the day you come to the conclusion that Hallowed Be Thy Name is the best Iron Maiden song. And I think when it comes to Sabbath, eventually you come to the conclusion that Children of the Grave is the quintessential Black Sabbath song. At number 3, the debut record, self-titled, 1970. This record, one day to record, one day to mix. There are mistakes on this record. I don't want to say mistakes. I can't hear mistakes, but I know there's fudges that the band says, well, I would have redone that little measure. It's a masterpiece of a record. I mean, back in the day when you recorded in the studio, it was a performance because you could never reproduce it again. Now with digital copying and pasting and auto-tuning, you could go back in and do the identical record again if you had to. That was not the case. This debut record, they recorded in one day. That was a performance. Sure, there's a few, as they say, warts and all on this record, but I don't hear them. It just sounds like a band jamming in a club or a garage. The mix is amazing. Now, how today do we have, Pro Tools and all this digital recording? But yet, back then in 1970, they hooked up a reel-to-reel and probably just ran it live in the room with probably a couple of mics. And they captured a sound that we've never heard since. Kind of like the Beatles. The Beatles recordings with George Martin and those psychedelic Beatles records, no album has sounded that genuine since. Warm, analog, real. That debut Sabbath record, if you can listen to it on vinyl or a cassette tape or an 8-track tape, those are all analog. It started everything. It was the egg. One word is the beginning, the birth of heavy metal. When you lived in Birmingham at this point in 1970, your choices, you had 3 choices. You either worked at the steel factory, you went on the government dole, or you worked at the steel factory. So bands would play to get out of that town, and like an athlete in America to get to a better situation, they play a lot of sports. I mean, there's also musicians who, to get to a better place, they practice the heck out of their instrument. Like any entertainment field, that's the way out. And they made it out. Ozzy Osbourne apparently didn't even own shoes. His family was so poor. The song Black Sabbath is sinister. The song Black Sabbath, it has that flatted fifth. You know, flat's like a half step down, so it'd be boom, da, da. So apparently that third note there, you were put in jail if you did that back, like, hundreds of years ago. If you flatted the fifth, yeah, locked up. Let's discuss Bill Ward. He is just so good. At one time, Black Sabbath, Tony Iommi, Ozzy, Geezer, they said that Bill Ward passed out. They painted him head to toe with paint. It clogged all of his pores, and he woke up suffocating. Apparently you breathe through your skin. So, they almost suffocated the guy. Not long after, they said, "Can we set you on fire?" He said, "Well, hell no, you can't set me on fire." And then Bill Ward came back in and goes, "Yeah, you can set me on fire." And they set the guy on fire. It's Bill Ward is maybe at times the MVP of Sabbath. At times. I mean, Bill Ward is just so underrated, what he contributed to that band. So when this album came out, the debut record, Ozzy took it home, put it on for his parents, and started out with the bells and the lightning, and of course that was all production, post-recording, so Ozzy didn't even recognize it. He thought he got the wrong record. His dad said, "Are you sure you're only on alcohol, son?" He said, "Well, yeah." "Why?" "Well, listen to this record. Sounds like you're a bunch of demonists." The best tracks, well, the title track, Black Sabbath, it started it all. The Wizard, although I don't like the harmonica. NIB. So I assume religious organizations, but a lot of people said, "Oh, well, Black Sabbath, NIB, Nativity in Black. Boo." Well, it wasn't NIB. Those lyrics came from Ozzy would look at Bill Ward's little pinner beard and go, "It looks like a nib." I don't even know what a nib is. Maybe it's some English talk, but it looks like a nib. And they put periods between it just to add confusion. And then people said, "Oh, they're into Satan," because the song NIB is Nativity in Black. Even if it is Nativity in Black, doesn't mean you're Satanist. I mean, Nativity in Black, that's actually one hell of a band name, an album title. I'm not really going to burn my records over that. The worst tracks, there are none. The end of the album dips a little, but the debut record, there are no bad tracks. It's just such a great record. At number 2, Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. The fifth album, 1973. One word for Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, the peak. Ozzy says this was the Black Sabbath peak. I say this is the Black Sabbath peak. And the irony is, Tony ran out of riffs. I mean, this was the riff generator. And apparently he could not come up with riffs. So they go to this castle, and then the riffs start coming. They record, and as they're recording and hanging out there, they're reporting seeing ghosts. Apparently they go down to the dungeon, do some artistic work there, and they see shadows and ghosts walking. Just a spooky album, and it's a masterpiece. Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath is the peak. It is their peak. I mean, it was it. Just a great record. Could easily be number one. Came in number 2, but it could easily be number 1. So Tony couldn't write riffs. They go to this castle. They start writing some very demonic riffs, and it just comes out to be just a great record. The best tracks, well, the title track, Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, is great. National Acrobat is great. Sabracadabra is Stoner Rock Heaven. Killing Yourself to Live is just amazing. Looking for Today is just amazing. Spiral Architect is amazing. The worst tracks on Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, of course, there are none. I mean, this album is a masterpiece. I mean, it could be number one, but number one is Volume 4. And Volume 4 is not my favorite record at all, but when I grade each song and get the mean average of the grades, it's consistency. I mean, a bunch of 4s and a 2, well, that could really hurt you. A bunch of 3.5s end up, winning the race. And in my horribly elementary grading scale, Volume 4 just does that. I mean, every song is just like a B plus. It sounds like classic rock. It doesn't even sound like Black Sabbath. I mean, Black Sabbath is all that doom and stuff, and of course, the first 3 records. Volume 4, they're now starting to become a classic rock band. The darkness is gone, and of course, it just continues to not sound like Paranoid. But Volume 4 is the most consistent record. One word, cocaine. It was supposed to be called Cocaine. No, it was supposed to be called Snowblind, about cocaine. The song Snowblind, the record label for the second time said we were not going to call it Snowblind because that means cocaine. And the record label also wouldn't let them call Paranoid Warpigs. So apparently, the record label has a lot to do with it. But I think nowadays, 2025, pretty sure you could call something Snowblind. But they wanted to call it Snowblind. Instead, they called it Volume 4. So, Ozzy's on the cover. It's like a silhouette. He's got these, those feather things he used to wear from his arms. And he's the only one on the album cover, and it is so badass. It is so cool. Maybe the coolest album cover ever is Volume 4. I mean, not only the cool silhouette of Ozzy, but Volume 4. Whenever you call anything a number, a volume, a chapter, you're not making any statements. You're not pushing any emotion. So you see this album, Volume 4. Volume 4 is neutral and a silhouette of a soon-to-be icon. Genius cover. Tony Iommi hated it. So Tony Iommi, the upcoming shows, he put Ozzy to the right and Tony Iommi stood in the middle. Which I understand that. I mean, when you're the songwriter or the band leader, watching singers, especially Ozzy wasn't even writing the lyrics. It was Geezer Butler writing the lyrics. And then later in his solo career, it was Bob Daisley writing the lyrics. So Ozzy's not a lyric writer. So I understand why it upsets people to watch them get all the coverage. But the fact that Tony Iommi put Ozzy to the right of the stage and he sat in the middle or stood in the middle, I think that's wonderful. Not even for any reason, just cool. Why do you have to have the singer in the middle? If you're a machine and you're all one part, who cares who's in the middle? But yeah, Tony pushed out Ozzy to the right because of the album cover, Volume 4. The best tracks, Wheels of Confusion, what a great song. Tomorrow's a Dream, Changes. I mean, Changes is so not Black Sabbath. This album is now just mainstream 70s rock. Changes, about Bill Ward's divorce. Now, I think Ozzy did write this, but I could be wrong. I'm going through changes. It hits me every time. What an amazing song. Just, to me, one of those monumental songs, Changes. Here's the problem, though. It's not Black Sabbath, though. So as much as I love it, I'd rather see it on a Tony Iommi solo record or an Ozzy solo record. But either way, what a great song. Snowblind, of course, great song. Cornucopia might be the first stoner, I mean, not first, but just one of the songs that continue to build this thing called stoner rock. Cornucopia, what a stoner rock riff it is. Under the Sun is so amazing. It's stoner rock, it's great. The worst tracks on Volume 4, there are absolutely no bad tracks. Volume 4 is the most consistent, great record of Black Sabbath. If you like anything I said, please hit like and subscribe. Peace.